Remember to give the video a thumbs up, share your insights in the comments, and subscribe to keep up with our newest narratives. It's hard to believe I find myself here, gazing out the window with a warm cup of tea cradled in my hands, the memories of that night vivid as if they happened just yesterday. Yet there are instances in life that etch themselves into your memory so profoundly that, regardless of the passage of time, they stay just as vibrant, just as rich in feeling. I had reached the age of 62, well beyond the time for pursuing thrills or anticipating the unexpected. At this point in life, one might feel as though they've experienced everything, particularly after spending nearly 2 decades at the same organization. My work may not have been flashy, but it provided a sense of security. I served as the executive assistant to Daniel Carter, the CEO of a prominent publishing house in Chicago. He was the type of leader who earned respect, not through demands, but by embodying a calm and commanding presence. He maintained a consistent professionalism, exhibiting control at all times, and never once did he allow the boundaries between business and personal matters to become indistinct. Up until that evening. It began with an unassuming email. "Shall we have dinner this evening? This one's on me. I need to talk to you about something significant." I scowled at my screen, going over the message several times. Daniel never invited me to dinner. Indeed, we frequently put in late hours, occasionally opting for food delivery to the office, yet this situation felt distinct. This served as an invitation. Initially, I felt compelled to refuse. Ultimately, what could be so crucial that it can't be addressed within the confines of the workplace? Yet, my curiosity proved too strong, and before I could dwell on it, my fingers were already dancing across the keyboard in response. "Absolutely. When and where will it be?" His reply arrived in no time at all. 7 in the evening. La Belle Vale. I blinked. La Belle Vale was more than just a restaurant. It was among the most refined and cozy spots in the city. Tables aglow with candlelight, a pianist serenading in the corner with gentle jazz, and a menu so rarefied that reservations were required weeks ahead. A peculiar, jittery sensation took root in my stomach as I gathered my belongings that evening. Was this related to professional matters? A chance for advancement? That doesn't quite add up. I had reached the pinnacle of my craft. Perhaps a proposal for retirement. But then, what's the appeal of dining at a venue like that? When I finally reached the restaurant, my heart raced more intensely than it ought to for an ordinary dinner. The hostess guided me to a quiet table by the window, where Daniel was already seated. He remained upright as I neared, his familiar sharp suit intact, yet there was an unmistakable change in his demeanor. A nearly frenetic vitality marked the way he adjusted his cufflinks and tidied his tie. "You look lovely tonight," he remarked as I settled into my chair. I chuckled softly, dismissing the praise with a wave of my hand. "Thank you very much. I really hope this isn't regarding my quarterly reports, as I was looking forward to a break from spreadsheets tonight." He let out a soft laugh, yet there was a gentle glow in his eyes that I had overlooked until now. "No, it doesn't pertain to work. Not completely, at least." The waiter approached with the wine, and before I had the chance to speak, Daniel had swiftly ordered a bottle of my beloved Chateau Margaux. My stomach churned. How could he possibly have known that? The dialogue began on a cheerful note, brimming with effortless chuckles and anecdotes from the workplace. As the night unfolded, I sensed a change in the atmosphere surrounding us. A tension that eluded my understanding. At last, once the plates had been removed, he leaned in a bit, his voice dropping to a softer tone. "I have a question for you, and I hope you don't feel any pressure about it. I seek your candid response." I paused, a silent agreement in my eyes. "I will be stepping away from my career at the close of this year." My heart plummeted. I collaborated with Daniel for 20 years. He was more than just a superior to me. He was a companion of mine. The thought of his departure created an unsettling emptiness within me. "However, that isn't the reason I summoned you here." He halted, examining me intently. "For the past few years, I've been contemplating what life will be like once I step away, and the deeper I delve into those thoughts, the clearer it becomes that there's someone I truly wish to carry with me as I leave that office behind. A lump began to rise in my throat. Daniel. He extended his hand toward me, his fingers radiating warmth as they brushed against mine. My feelings for you, Evelyn, go beyond mere admiration. Your well-being matters to me. Perhaps more than is advisable. He released a gentle laugh, shaking his head slightly. I kept silent until now, as I was hesitant to overstep any boundaries. As I gaze into the future, it becomes clear to me that I cannot imagine those years unfolding without you by my side. My thoughts whirled. This individual held the position of my superior. My composed, professional, always appropriate supervisor. He sat opposite me, expressing his feelings and saying that he cared for me. I realize this might come as a surprise, he said softly, holding my hand with a tender grip, and I understand you may have never viewed me in that light. However, I felt it was important to share this with you. If there's even the slightest possibility that you might share these feelings, perhaps we don't need to continue pretending that our connection is purely professional. I parted my lips, yet silence enveloped me. I had reached the age of 62. For quite a while, the idea of romance hadn't crossed my mind. Following my divorce, I immersed myself in my work, believing that those aspects of life were now in the past. As I sat here, gazing into the eyes of a man who had shared my journey for 2 decades, a realization dawned upon me. I was utterly taken aback. I was more than flattered. Fear gripped me. Because deep within a part of myself I had yet to uncover, I realized he wasn't the sole actor in this long-running charade. I gazed at Daniel, my heart racing within me. The environment enveloped us, feeling increasingly confined. No clinking glasses, no whispered exchanges, only the heaviness of his words bearing down on me. I have a deep concern for you, perhaps more than is wise. I took a deep breath, my fingers quivering beneath his caress. What was I meant to say in response to something like this? Daniel. Text. I find myself at a loss for words, I confessed, my tone softer than I had meant it to be. You don't need to say a word at this moment, he said softly, his gaze brimming with empathy. I simply. Evelyn, I've held on to this for far too long, and I refuse to let any more time slip away without sharing it with you. Moments. That word loomed large between us. At 62, I was not a woman who indulged in fantasies of epic love stories or fleeting passions. My life had found its groove, familiar, unwavering, secure. In the heart of a refined restaurant, the man I had collaborated with for 20 years was proposing an idea that had the potential to alter the course of everything. I withdrew my hand, craving a moment to gather my thoughts. Daniel, I never considered you in that light. You have consistently held the roles of both my superior and my companion. He acknowledged, a faint, nearly melancholic smile gracing his lips. Perhaps I bear some responsibility for that. Perhaps I ought to have allowed you to perceive me in a different light much earlier. I let out a soft sigh, my fingers instinctively reaching for the wine glass, seeking a distraction for my restless hands. You surprised me. This is quite overwhelming. I comprehend. He nodded, allowing the moment to linger, neither pushing nor demanding, simply waiting in quiet anticipation. However, I have one question for you, Evelyn. When you reflect on your life beyond your job, do you ever consider your own identity? What is it that you desire? Or have you merely come to terms with the fact that this is all there is? His words pierced, not due to their harshness, but because they resonated with undeniable truth. When was the last time I reflected on my own happiness, my own desires? My marriage concluded more than 15 years ago, not through a dramatic betrayal, but rather through a gradual, silent separation. My former spouse found a new partner within 2 years, while I immersed myself in my career, convincing myself that I was okay, that I required nothing beyond what I possessed. For the first time in years, someone was inquiring about my desires. I'm not sure, I confessed, my voice scarcely rising above a whisper. Daniel reclined in his chair, observing me intently. Perhaps it's time to discover the truth. I let out a slow breath, gently shaking my head. What if I discover that I'm not prepared for this? What if I'm simply unable to? His lips formed a smile that hinted at understanding. In that case, I will agree to that. Yet, I have a feeling that what you discover will be quite different. The waiter approached with the bill, and before I could even think about grabbing my purse, Daniel had already taken care of it. As we prepared to depart, he gently rested his hand on the small of my back, a touch that was light, warm, and steady. It coursed an unforeseen thrill through me. I don't want an answer tonight, he said softly as we stepped outside into the crisp Chicago air. Please take a moment to consider it. I nodded, still immersed in a fog of confusion. I shall. He smiled, his eyes lingering on mine for a moment longer than needed. Sweet dreams, Evelyn. Sleep well, Daniel. That night, slumber eluded me. I reclined in bed, gazing at the ceiling, revisiting each moment of dinner in my mind. The intensity of his gaze, the gentle lilt in his voice as he uttered my name, the treachery of my own body, the rapid beat of my heart at the brush of his hand against mine, the unintentional shift of my body closer to his. Had I genuinely never considered him from that perspective? Or had I simply concealed it so profoundly that I chose not to confront it? The following morning, I reached the office ahead of time, yearning for a brief moment to gather my thoughts before confronting him. Yet, the moment I crossed the threshold, it became clear that such a thing was out of reach. A solitary red rose rested on my desk, its petals glistening with the remnants of morning dew. No note. No elaboration needed. A quiet note, patiently awaiting my reply. The rose lingered, fragile yet undeniably captivating. My fingers lingered just above its petals, yet I refrained from making contact. I was aware of the one who had abandoned it. I already knew without needing a note. I took a deep breath, placed my bag on the ground, and settled into my chair. That morning, my office had an unusual atmosphere, infused with an indescribable energy. The familiar routine that once provided solace now seemed to waver, leaving me feeling unbalanced. Daniel. The echoes of his words from the previous night lingered in my mind. Have you ever contemplated your own existence? What is it that you desire? For years, I was certain that I required nothing beyond what I already possessed. My autonomy, my profession, my thoughtfully crafted seclusion. And yet, here I found myself, gazing at a solitary rose and sensing a flicker of emotion awaken within me. Engrossed in my musings, I was suddenly interrupted by a familiar knock at my office door. Good morning. His voice exuded warmth and steadiness. I turned, and there he stood, Daniel, framed in the doorway, his expression a mystery. Good morning, I responded, my tone gentler than I had meant it to be. He entered the room, gently shutting the door behind him. Have you received my gift? My eyes returned to the rose. I certainly did. He inclined his head just a fraction. Releasing a measured exhale, I clasped my hands gently in my lap. I'm not sure what you want me to respond with, Daniel. He offered a faint smile as he settled into the seat opposite me. I hold no expectations, Evelyn. I'm curious about your thoughts right now. I paused. Honestly, it seems as though everything in my life shifted dramatically last night. For 2 decades, I've regarded you as both my superior and my companion. And all at once, you're requesting that I perceive you in a new light. He nodded, his eyes unwavering. Is that really a negative aspect? I parted my lips to respond, yet silence enveloped me. The reality was, I was uncertain. Daniel inclined his body forward just a touch, his elbows perched on his knees. I wish to ensure your comfort, Evelyn. That's the very last thing I would ever desire. Yet, I cannot feign that these feelings do not exist within me. Not any longer. I took a deep breath. What is this, Daniel? What exactly are you inquiring about? His demeanor became gentler. Opportunity. An opportunity for you to explore whether there might be something of interest here. If perhaps, just perhaps, you could share those feelings. I averted my gaze, focusing on the sprawling cityscape beyond the glass. The skyline unfolded before my eyes, known yet unexpectedly brimming with opportunities one had never imagined. Is it truly possible for me to accomplish this? Am I willing to embrace the uncertainty? I confessed, my voice scarcely rising above a whisper. I'm not sure I can simply alter my perception of you. Daniel appeared unfazed. He appeared calm and empathetic, exuding a sense of patience. So, just let it flow naturally. Allow it to unfold organically. I glanced back at him, my fingers intertwining nervously. And if it doesn't, he smiled, a true, heartfelt smile. I will remain here, regardless of the circumstances. I let out a breath, sensing a bit of the heaviness in my chest ease away. That's a perilous vow, Daniel. His eyes sparkled, hesitant to embrace my risks. Throughout the day, the conversation lingered in my thoughts, refusing to fade away. I anticipated that the atmosphere would be uncomfortable, strained. However, they were not. Daniel continued on as though everything remained the same. He refrained from pushing. He maintained his distance. And still, I sensed it. Each time he walked by my office. Each time our gazes locked over the conference table. Each time he spoke my name, there was a subtle warmth that crept into his voice. As the day drew to a close, I found myself drained, not due to my tasks, but because of the whirlwind of my own reflections. As I collected my belongings to depart, my phone vibrated with an incoming message. Daniel, it's time for dinner. Only dinner. Take your time. What are your thoughts? I paused, my thumb lingering just above the screen. I might choose to decline. I could maintain the status quo, secure and familiar. Or I could venture into uncharted territory. My heart raced as I crafted my reply. Where am I supposed to be and at what time? The eatery exuded a serene ambience, softly illuminated, with gentle murmurs of dialogue weaving through the atmosphere. I settled at the table, my fingers gently clasping the stem of my wine glass, observing the dance of the candlelight. Daniel sat opposite me, at ease, his eyes unwavering as ever. He masked any signs of nervousness effortlessly. Yet I was. I had devoted the whole day to convincing myself not to show up. And yet, here I found myself, seated opposite the man who had been my superior for 20 years, now perceiving him in a manner I had never experienced before. Thank you for saying yes, Daniel said, his voice filled with warmth. A subtle smile graced my lips. I nearly didn't. He let out a soft laugh. I had a feeling. I exhaled softly, adjusting my position in the chair. This situation has me at a loss, Daniel. I find it challenging to suddenly perceive you in a new light. He inclined his head slightly, savoring a sip of his beverage. I'm not requesting that you do. I simply hoped for a smooth evening. Merely a pair sharing a meal together. I observed him closely. He presented it in such an uncomplicated manner. Yet, everything about this seemed anything but straightforward to me. As the evening unfolded, I gradually felt a sense of ease wash over me. We shared conversations about our jobs, reminisced about tales from the past, and exchanged amusing anecdotes that brought laughter. It felt effortless. At a certain moment, Daniel reclined in his chair, observing me intently. He remarked that he had overlooked this. I raised an eyebrow. What did I overlook? Observing you in this state. You consistently maintain a serious demeanor at work, ensuring that everything and everyone is well taken care of. In this moment, it's simply you being yourself. I blinked, taken aback by his words. I couldn't recall the last occasion when someone had truly gazed at me in that way. A sudden flutter stirred within my chest, an unfamiliar and unexpected sensation. Following dinner, we stepped outside, the refreshing night air embracing us. Just as I was reaching for my phone to call a cab, Daniel's voice interrupted the moment. I'd be happy to give you a ride home. I paused, contemplating my next move. It seemed like a boundary I ought to respect. Yet, after a brief pause, I acquiesced with a nod. The journey was serene, pleasant. As we arrived at my house, my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. As he shifted the car into park, I turned to him, my mind racing for the perfect words to say. Daniel. He extended his arm, softly grasping my hand. His touch radiated warmth, a steady presence. No need to say a word, Edlin. I gulped. However, I certainly do. I'm uncertain about the appropriate placement for this. I'm uncertain if I can provide what you seek. His thumb glided softly across my fingers. Let's take our time. Let's approach this gradually, step by step. I exhaled unsteadily, my heart racing in my chest. It seems effortless when you put it that way. He offered a gentle smile. As it ought to be. I gazed at him then, truly gazed at him. For the first time, I allowed myself to ponder. What if? Perhaps this isn't the conclusion of anything. Perhaps, just perhaps, it marked the dawn of something new. I gently grasped his hand for a moment before letting go, my fingers moving toward the door handle. Sleep well, Daniel. He observed me with an unwavering calmness. Sleep well, Edlin. As I stepped outside and made my way to my front door, the warmth of his touch still lingered on my skin. For the first time in ages, I experienced something different as well. Anticipation.